Hello YouTube, this is Walkia Lion. I hope you are all having a fabulous day. I'm coming to you with another video of Neo-naturalism, focusing on Air Kingdom and the three air signs, Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini. Now, this one's going to be a bit harder to explain, so bear with me. The concept of air is very abstract, so it's easy to see how it can be very difficult to deal with, especially considering that air tends to deal with the mind quite a bit, and language, which language in and of itself is a very, especially as we see today, is a very all over the place and easily manipulated tool. But I'll do my best to try and explain what it means within neo-naturalism and what its natural place is within society as a whole. Now, when we think of air, as I have said, air is the art of language. It is the word. It is knowledge. It is, you can think of it as the imagination being utilized to describe the physical world, as well as to describe the world that we cannot see, right? A lot of what neo-naturalism is, of course, utilizing air to describe itself, is an extremely abstract thing that is very hard to understand. Hopefully, not as hard as I might be worried that it is, but it's still a complicated subject to grab a hold of. If it wasn't, then I don't think that society will be as dysfunctional as it is today, but it is. The abstract is very, very difficult for the human mind to understand. We can come up with solutions every day with it. We can come up with the language, with the ideas, with the images, all of which, like I said, is language. Images, mathematics, shapes, colors, all of that we see within our mind and that we see with our eyes and hear, taste, smell, touch, that is all a type of language. It is something that in traditional society has always been used as a means of creating law. Creating law, philosophy, finding ways to best describe what we see and are trying to understand. It uses music quite a bit, music being the language of the soul, so it understands the mechanics of it very well. It is a fickle thing. I firmly believe the reason why one of the hallmarks of a dysfunctional society, honestly, is when you solidify air. It's a radical idea, but generally speaking, what it means is that unless everybody is in absolute agreement, and I mean absolute agreement over the subject matter at hand, then law should never be solidified. And the only reason then is because literally everybody basically solidifies the law. When you start to solidify law absolutely, you start creating what are essentially regulations and protocols. Then that's when you end up having a problem, because in law, when you start putting it down on stone, what you're doing is you're killing the art of the word, the art of language. It changes and adapts continuously over a situation, simply because every situation is different from the last. It needs to be remembered. It needs to be acknowledged, the past incidences, the past examples. But to make an absolute out of air is asinine. It's like asking fire to cool down. Like, it just, That's not in its nature. It's just not. You start bringing the realm of earth, the kingdom of earth, into the realm of air, and they just don't. They is destructive as can be. We see this, say, in the justice system. We'll use an example that I am somewhat familiar with. In justice, in criminal justice, I work in a prison. Now, there's a lot of guys in there who lie all the time of their innocence. But there's also many of them who are in there who are innocent. And the reality is that a lot of them were in the wrong place at the wrong time and were forced into their position basically out of happenstance. Now, the law, being an absolute, says he is absolutely condemned. That's not how it should be. He should always have the opportunity to make right his mistakes, to pay the dues owed to the victim and those who were harmed. That is not what happens. And what happens in real life is that, and it needs to be understood, that true justice is a coming to understanding with one another and accepting each other's apologies. It's a balance. It's an equilibrium of the crime committed and the price that must be paid. But that's not what happens in justice. What happens in justice is that being an absolute and being so heavily focused on solidifying itself, and what can only be described as tyranny in a lot of ways. Like it completely shackles the individuals to the point where they are not able to ever achieve true justice, because they instead are buried underneath the rock of the justice system. Justice is a continuous process. It's just like, it's very similar to trauma healing. It's a process that requires a lot of acceptance, a lot of self-evaluation, a lot of pain. The environments that most criminals are put into does not do that. Instead, it feeds and it puts on the pain, because they are never allowed to move on. They are never allowed to grow, to learn, to develop themselves. They are literally put in purgatory. They are stuck in rock, behind rock walls, instead of doing the mental and the emotional work of actually dealing with what they did, the victims dealing with them and what they did, and both parties coming to a conclusion that they are both satisfied with. However that manifests, it is purely up to the societies as a whole, but not in condemnation, of somebody's life, like total life, spirit, mind, and body. In neo-naturalism, that is the greatest sin that a person can commit, is to enslave a human being by controlling spirit, mind, and body. That is what happens to these people, regardless of whether they deserve it or not. It is not correct. And that being said, dealing with the word, dealing with law, dealing with philosophy, dealing with the abstract and difficult to understand and communicate. That is the purpose of the air signs. That is the purpose of Air Kingdom, is to try and take the complexities of the human mind and manifest it in the world in a productive, healthy way. That being said, we're going to go to Gemini and explain what Gemini's purpose is. Now, Gemini, being a mutable sign, they rule the mind within the holy triad of Air Kingdom. Their place is to be the researcher. As far as I can understand it, all air signs are big into research, but Gemini has a particular ability to dig into the fine details of things and to work with knowledge on a multi-scaled level. They're kind of the jacks of all trades. They are, in a lot of ways, they are kind of the communicator. They are the communicator of the air signs because they are able to best communicate what air represents and its ideals. The best living example of a Gemini that we all probably know is Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson, it's not so much that his message is not... How should I say this? Jordan Peterson managed to take a very abstract concept of self-fulfillment, duty, honor, all these different aspects of society. Things that people should already know, but we have, because we have become so corrupt, we have forgotten the basics, the bare minimum basics. He's managed to take these abstract ideas and communicate it to people that in such a way that he is now a world famous self-help guru. I don't know is really the right word. He's just more of a world famous commentator is really what he is. And he is trying his best to take the knowledge of the academia and make it accessible to the people, which is exactly what Geminis are more or less made to do, is to make knowledge accessible to the unknowledgeable. Aquarius is a, and like I said, guys, this is going to be a hard one for me to do because these guys are very, very abstract. Well, from my observations, Aquarius more or less represents, as we can see, they represent the body of air. But what does that mean? As far as I can tell, what that means is they are literally the body of knowledge. Like, Aquarians are, from what I understand, the most intelligent out of all the signs. Which makes sense, because that basically means that in the Air Kingdom, they are the library. They are the book of knowledge. They invent and develop ideas. They create from nothing something. They have this ability to gain unfathomable amount of knowledge and apply it in practical ways, and then innovate on that knowledge and just come up with just random shit. Like they really are kind of the walking libraries, because they represent air's body, which is constant change. They constantly change, even though they're a fixed sign. It's a very strange dichotomy that they have. It's very strange contradictions. But representing the body of air, representing the knowledge in and of itself instead of the communication of it, they are able to create something from nothing. That is their gift. That is what they are capable of doing. And because they are the rebellious ones, They tend to create regardless of whether it's good or not. It doesn't really matter to an Aquarius, because to an Aquarius, so long as it is not the status quo, so long as it is change, they live for it and will develop it and will fight for it. And that's partially the reason why where the fixed nature comes in, is because they will fight for something regardless of whether it's correct or not, because that is how you enact change. Is you do not change in of yourself, rather you press that change upon the world. Why Gemini is not in this category, because Gemini, being the devil's advocate by nature, trying to see multiple sides of the same coin, they are unable to really hold firm naturally as Aquarius is with their knowledge. It's a necessary thing, considering the fact that, as I've established earlier, knowledge can be an extraordinarily subjective thing if you allow yourself to be manipulated and to be tricked. You have to have an absolute stalwart mind in order not to allow knowledge to become corrupt. And that is what Aquarians are supposed to do. And then you get to Libra. Now, Libra, being the spirit of air, being the cardinal sign between the three, they represent the humane aspect of air. Air signs have a very difficult time understanding and realizing their emotions. It's something that they just don't understand, and they also don't understand other people's emotions as well as they should. So they're not very considerate with their words a lot of the time, with their ideas, with their language. Libra, on the other hand, is the diplomat. They are the natural diplomat, and they are the ones who are able to take Gemini and Aquarians' more analytical and unfeeling traits and communicate to people what they need to understand in a way that they are not automatically going to shut those ideas out. Libra is able to take the insanity of air and communicate it to people where they can understand it emotionally, mentally, and physically. Gemini, as I've said, they communicate as well, and that is their job. However, Gemini is not able to communicate on an emotional level. Libra, however, is. Libra understands on an intellectual way the emotional aspects of language. They are the natural judge. They are the natural leaders of the air signs, because they are able to communicate while staying true to the emotions and not becoming biased. That's their greatest strength, is they do not become biased. It's also their greatest weakness. But if you look at all the signs, that tends to be the case, is that your greatest strength is always usually your greatest weakness. But they complement each other, and they help each other out a great deal. They allow each other to achieve the ultimate goal of Air Kingdom, which is to analyze and to project and to direct knowledge. They are able, as an example, in the complementary aspect, I am a firm believer that Air Kingdom and those in the avatars of the Air Kingdom, the elementals, their place, especially within society, collectively as a whole, is to be the final judges and support. They're kind of supposed to be the leash in a way, but not a leash that is agitating to the neck of Fire Kingdom. As I've established earlier, Fire Kingdom represents the military and the aggressive aspect of society. Air is sort of recon. They're the ones who basically direct fire and where it wants to go. In return, fire helps give air purpose. It gives air the reason to search for knowledge. And more importantly, it gives air the direction and the focus on what to discover and what to learn about. At this current time, as a perfect example, air are basically the ones fighting the battles right now. We're in a war of language. The war is being fought on multiple fronts, but the primary war is fought on language. And right now, it is best to wait until air finally says that language can no longer win this war before any other kind of actions can be taken place. Preparations may be made, but any actions, no. That is air's place. They are the ones who decide what direction to go. They are the ones who help direct things, who gain the necessary knowledge to understand things. And I am hoping in the future that they will be able to focus not just on the gaining of knowledge, but also the language of knowledge. Like I said, knowledge is basically whatever tool that our mind uses to explain that which we see, taste, hear, touch, and smell. Language in all its different aspects. Color, shapes, mathematics, words, sounds, tastes. It's all language. And it'll be very interesting to see what the future shows us on what exact and how those different sensory languages can teach us in the future. Anyway, I thank you all for watching my video. I would have greatly appreciate a comment down and a discussion on the subject at hand. I hope you all have a good day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.